Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's session in the ReadyTalk webinar series. Thank you for joining us today. If this is your first time on one of our events or you're a returner to one that you've come to before, we thank you for taking a few moments out of your day to join us and our speaker, Jill Konrath. Today's seminar is entitled, How to Keep Sales Momentum Going. And I'm here today, again, like I said, with Jill Konrath, best-selling author of Selling to Big Companies, which has been a top 20 Amazon sales book since 2006. Most recently, she wrote Snap Selling, and it soared to the #1 sales book on Amazon within hours of its release. Her clientele include companies like GE, IBM, and Staples, as well as many other entrepreneurial firms. And today we will be talking with Jill about some consultants that she can leverage her strategies to get more business. So a couple of housekeeping items before we do get started today. During today's presentation, all of the participants will be in a listen-only mode. However, if you guys have any questions or comments throughout today's presentation, please feel free to chat those into the chat feature, which is located at the lower left-hand portion of your screen. I'll switch it to this slide really quick. If you guys are following on Twitter, here is our hashtag for today, RTWebinar, and here are the Twitter handles for all the speakers on today's call. My name is Simone Verhulst, and I'm moderating from the ReadyTalk side, so if you have any questions for me as well, please feel to chat them over. Last quick reminder, today's webinar is being recorded Friday, January 20th, and you guys will all receive a link to this recording later on in the post-event email, so keep an eye out for that, excuse me. So before I hand it over to Jill, we have a couple questions I want to ask you guys to kind of give an idea of who we have on the phone. So here's your first poll question. What, in your opinion, is your current sales cycle like? So go ahead, answer one of those questions. Go ahead and submit when you do, and we'll take a couple minutes to let you guys answer those questions. A lot of people right in the middle, taking way too long. Can understand that for sure. That's great that we do have some faster than it's ever been. That's awesome. And we've got about 35, 36% here. About the same as always. So hopefully today's presentation gives you some tips to move that forward or solve whatever is going on right now in the way too long process. All right, so one other quick question before I hand it over to Jill. What % of your sales ops are you losing to kind of that no decision response? All across the board on this one. Definitely looks like it's in that 50%. 50% range is kind of leading the way. So give you a couple more seconds to answer that. I think we'll have a lot of great insight from Jill today to speak to these. And so on that note, I'm actually going to hand it off to her to get started. What do you have to say about some of these results today, Jill?
Well, what I have to say is they're very typical of what I'm seeing out there. I'm not seeing too many salespeople who are saying our sales cycle is going faster than ever, although there are some technologies where they've set up a whole system that makes things go faster. What I'm really seeing across the board is people saying that it's taking either way too long or it's about the same as ever, but we'd still like to be able to shorten the sales cycle as well, because about the same is not good enough based on their own expectations in the sales force. And the other thing in terms of losing to no decision, that's kind of an interesting question in terms of how people interpret it, and it depends on what you call prospect, I guess I would say. But basically we are seeing loss to no decision being the primary factor in why people aren't getting the business today. They're losing not to a competitor but to doing nothing. And a lot of you are reporting that that is your single biggest competitor out there right now in the market. So with that, I'd like to really talk about what is going on and what you're feeling as a salesperson or consultant entrepreneur who's trying to get business out there today. And what over and over, I'm being called upon to work with salespeople and anybody who's trying to be a seller right now to help them get in front of and get meetings set up with customers. It is the most frustrating thing that people are facing right now because our prospects have set up huge barriers in front of them to protect us from getting to them. And they're doing this because they're overwhelmed themselves. And so we're on the outside and we are chartered with selling something, whether it's our product or service or solution. We're chartered to get the business. We aren't successful unless we can get meetings set up with these people, and they're not answering the phone. They're not calling us back. And even prospects that we've been working with for a period of time may oftentimes disappear into the proverbial black hole, which is probably the worst thing that I think all of us can imagine. And this proverbial black hole, and I'm having trouble advancing the slide, so if somebody could help me out with that. I'm not sure if it's showing. But this proverbial black hole that we're facing is actually driving salespeople crazy. Because not only can they not reach people, which is hard in the first place, but when they do reach a human being, and they do have a really good conversation where it appears that the prospect is interested in what they're saying, they have a good meeting, and the person they're talking to says, yes, this is something we really want to do. We just need to get a few ducks in a row, and then we'll be all set to go ahead with this. But when these people don't call you back, that's even worse, because you fought long and hard to get to these opportunities, and at first when they don't call you back, you just assume that it's perhaps because they didn't get your message, and you don't think anything of it because sometimes that happens. So you send another email or call them up again maybe a couple days later, and you still don't hear back from them, and then you do it again. And maybe after about 2 weeks you start to wonder and question your own judgment in terms of, did I really misjudge what they said? I could have sworn that they were interested in what we had to offer, but they're not returning my calls. And then it continues and gets worse as you still try to gain access to these people, because at some point you say, what in the world did I do wrong? How could I have blown it so badly? And then you figure out you have to go perhaps into a recovery mode. But this is the challenge that we're all facing. What do we do with those prospects who disappear into the black hole? But I think the bigger question is, how can we prevent that from happening? And I always work with people on prevention strategies more so than recovery strategies, because with prevention you're not trying to dig yourself out of a grave. You're trying to keep yourself from getting in the grave and keeping things moving along. The truth is that every one of us right now is struggling to get things done in a certain period of time. And if I could have go to the next slide. And you've got the Wicked Witch of the West, whether it's yourself who's putting self-induced pressure on you right now, whether it's yourself or whether it's your boss. Somebody is watching to say, when is it coming? When is it coming? And getting anxious. And you're getting nervous as you're watching the sands drip through the hourglass going, oh my God, the month is coming to an end. Many of you just finished off your fiscal year in your company, and you closed out December strong. And all of a sudden you looked at January, and there's nothing on your plate. And you're going, whoa, I have to fill this thing, so time is running out and the pressure is mounting. And people are scrambling within your corporation saying, how do we get this going? Now, you may be scurrying around worrying about time, but I have to tell you, your prospect is struggling with the time issue far more than you're struggling with the time issue. And that is the biggest thing that is impacting your sales today. What's happening is, and the biggest thing to your sales momentum is crazy busy customers. The everyday chaos that your prospects are living within right now is fundamentally impacting your ability to be successful. And that's why we need to deal with this issue. And until and unless you understand this at the core of your being, that this is impacting every communications you have with your client. It's impacting whether they choose to have a meeting with you, whether they choose to not have a meeting with you, whether they choose to continue meeting with you and actually even implement your solution. The everyday chaos is ruling right now, and you're dealing with people who are saying, I don't know how I am going to get it all done. I don't know how I'm going to get it all done. Oops, I'm going to go back one more slide if we can and talk about what's going on. Excuse me for messing up here. Your customers are saying, I have more to do than I've ever had to do before. I'm expected to do it in shorter time frames, and I have fewer resources. Now, I know the economy has been tough in the last couple of years, and this is certainly impacting what you're seeing right here, but this is not going to stop when the economy recovers. Companies are not hiring and staffing their organizations up to deal with these increased workloads. They are expecting people to be more productive. And so we need to continue to deal with this on a basis. And we need to see that this is the world that we're selling into. And we have to be able to work with this person who does have simply way too much to do, not enough time to get it done, and then has priorities flip overnight. And you know yourself that in your own organization, there are times when your company has been barreling ahead, we're going here, we're going here, we're going here as fast as we can, and then suddenly something happens and the priorities switch just like that. And it could be because third quarter results came out, or it could be because a competitor made a different move, or it could be because a new management person came into the organization and has a different way of looking at things. But suddenly the person that you are working with, who was all ready to go with you, is jerked back in a totally different direction and told to invest time here, not over there. Even though what you were talking about is still important, suddenly something is more important. So when we think about this and we put this in the context of our prospects, and then we think about the typical message that we're sending to these people via email or via voicemail, we oftentimes dig ourselves into our own grave. And again, I talk about we're trying to prevent you from slowing down your sales. We're trying to speed things up, which means you have to do things right. But here's what most people are doing when they're actually working with their customers, trying to get their attention. And they'll say, and I'll use my own business as a message, but I want you to listen to this message. You can see it on the screen, but I want you to hear me saying this. And I want you to listen as if you're like going nuts and you've got to run to a meeting shortly and you still got to get that proposal done, and your boss wants you to do something else. And I call up and I'm kind of chipper because I'm a salesperson and I want to be I want to be up for this and make I'm excited about what I'm doing. And I say, "Hi, Eric. My name is Jill Konrath, and I'm the account executive for Leapfrog Strategies. We specialize in offering a full range of sales training programs for business-to-business salespeople. And the reason I'm calling you is that I'd love to find out how your company is currently handling your sales training needs and share with you a little bit about our programs. I know you're busy, so I'd be glad to meet with you at your earliest convenience. My number is 651-429-1922. Have a great day." Now this is a typical message that somebody leaves who doesn't want to sound like a salesperson. And yet the person you're calling, that crazy busy person that you are calling, literally says, "Oh my God, another person, salesperson, they all sound the same." And they delete you. Their fingers are sitting on the delete button, ready to get rid of you as soon as they can, and they take perverse pleasure into deleting you into oblivion as soon as humanly possible. Now this is a voicemail message, and I didn't ramble. This is kind of a concise one, but a lot of salespeople ramble because they don't even know what they're going to say. But even worse is email messaging. And I want to show you an example, and I just, again, I'm using my own business as an example here because you're all in sales and can relate to this. But what I want to show you next is an email message that is so typical of companies I see who are trying to speed up the sales cycle. And literally, you need to see that this message is an attempt to speed up the sales cycle, to gain sales momentum. But look at that message. It's nice. Good afternoon, Eric. As a VP of Sales, I'm sure you're always looking for ways to drive more revenue. Notice how I'm connecting with that. And the reason I'm writing is that I'd like to introduce you to Leapfrog Strategies' comprehensive line of sales training programs. We've been serving the high-tech market since 1986, and our clients include companies like IBM, Microsoft, and Oracle, as well as numerous growing technology firms. Our most requested programs are listed below. I invite you to click on the links to learn more about each of them, blah, 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 blah. All the above sessions are available in full day and half day, plus they're available in keynotes. Do you see where I'm going with this? Like, this is really boring. This is really boring that we have this type of message where it's going on and on and on. And yet, the reason this message is written is an attempt to speed up the sales cycle. It's an attempt to introduce your company's full line of resources. And most of you could probably drop your own message in here and say we offer a full line of, or we offer 24/7 one-stop shopping for all your blankety-blank needs. And you list all your blankety-blank stuff. And you're thinking, surely my prospect is going to go through this list and go, "Oh, that fourth bullet point down looks really good." But their prospect doesn't do that. Research into sales success shows that your prospect spends about 2.7 seconds making a decision on if they're going to listen or read your message or delete it or forward it to somebody else in the company. 2.7 seconds is about the same time as it takes to read the subject line in the first sentence or two in your message. And look what I've written here. As a nice person, I've written something that's really boring to you as a reader, and you would delete it. And you need to think that this is oftentimes being viewed on a cell phone where the screen is miniature and it is an endless email that gets deleted. Now, please note, these are the primary factors that are causing your sales to slow down. It's the approach you're using to gain attention, to capture the attention of the decision makers. And what I found in working with people today and working with crazy busy people, oops, I'm really having trouble here. It's my own fault. I'm going back to the wrong one. Yes, thank you. Here's what I discovered when I was studying crazy busy people, because that's what it becomes a function of what I was doing, is studying crazy busy people and how they were reacting. Crazy busy people are making snap decisions, and they are making decisions so fast in terms of if they're going to listen to you. You have a 20-minute phone message, maybe an email message that's 50 words or 75 words, and they're making a decision on this. Are they going to work with you? And they're saying, is this simple? Do I get what they're saying? Now, that long email message is certainly not simple. It's rambling, and that causes somebody to delete. There's a snapping point. Something is not sort of simple, or it's either simple or complex. They're making a decision, do I sound like an intelligent person to meet with? And believe me, if I give any of these messages that I just showed you, I sound like a product-pushing peddler, even though I might be the smartest, most consultative salesperson in the whole wide world. My message does not showcase that. It makes me sound like a shyster who's just trying to pitch the stuff. The other thing you're listening to, is it aligned? Is your message aligned with their core business objectives? Because if it's not, it's irrelevant. And all they're listening for is what's on their plate, what they have to achieve, what's happening right now. And finally, they're saying, is this a priority? Please note that that fulcrum point is not in the middle. It's very far onto the edge. These people have virtually no tolerance for anything that is not simple, that doesn't make you stand out as a valuable resource, that is not aligned with their business objectives and is not a priority. If you can't meet all those criteria, your chances of being deleted at any point in the sales cycle become high. Now, these snap factors aren't just for getting in. Some of you are working with prospects and you're losing them, but you're losing them because something else became a higher priority, or you're losing them because it is not aligned enough with what they're trying to achieve. What I often tell salespeople is that the most important thing you have to do is realize that your product or service is just a tool. Like, nobody gives a rip about it, period. They don't care about your stuff. Nobody cares about my sales training program. Nobody cares about your unique services or wonderful methodology. Nobody cares about your state-of-the-art robust systems or your one-stop shopping. They simply don't care. All they care about is what it does for them. So your challenge becomes talking about things in a fundamentally different way than most people are doing today. And the real reason that your things aren't going through is because it's not aligned with what they're trying to achieve, and you're not communicating it importantly. What's their goal? What are their objectives is the most important point you should be saying. Your product or service helps them achieve their objectives, their goal, what they're trying to do. If you're not sitting down and analyzing your targeted customers and saying, what are the business objectives they're trying to reach these days? What plans do they have in place to achieve these objectives, and how do my tools, products or services, help them get there? You're not going to be talking their language, which is going to slow down your sales process and make you lose to no decision. Terrible thing to lose to no decision, but until you talk about things from their perspective, you are toast. You don't exist. You're not worth meeting with. Now, again, I've said your product or service is a tool, and your prospect is saying, is it worth it to change to this product or service? That's the key question they're asking at the front end. Is it worth it? Because if it's worth it, it's a pain in the you-know-what to switch from what I'm doing today. That's why you have to be so explicit in the value that you bring. You can't assume that they can I can't say that word, that they can figure it out themselves. And you know, I can't say that word, I'm really stuck. That they can figure out what you're trying to say and the real value that your product or service brings to them. Over and over again I see people saying, we can do this, it's a benefit, it helps you speed up this, but they don't get into it and really get into the meat and the true value of what they're doing. And if you can't do it yourself, then believe me, you can't do what is absolutely needed today in order to get your prospects to the next step. And that's to jolt, oh, dang, I did it again. And that's to jolt them out of their complacency with the status quo. Push comes to shove, they'll stay with what they're doing. Your job as a seller, if you want to keep sales momentum going, is to jolt them out of the status quo. And you can only jolt them out of the status quo by bringing in expertise that deals with the critical issues that are causing you to be deleted. Now, right up front, it's a function of changing your language and coming and doing messaging that is significantly different. And I'll just show you an example of that right now. Here's a revised message that I would send to somebody that's a prospect of mine, which focuses on the key business issues that my prospect is facing. And my revised message might say, hi Eric, Jill Konrath. Oops, I know you're under lots of pressure to meet your sales forecast, which is really tough to do when your salespeople can't set up meetings with decision makers. I've got some ideas on how you can speed up your sales cycle and get more prospects in your pipeline. Let's set up a time to talk. My number is 651-429-1922. I want you to look at that and say, this is not about Jill's sales training programs. This is about Eric's issues. The switch in the message is critical to your sales momentum. And it's all about the value that you bring. And it's about the issue and the objective that Eric, your prospect, is struggling to face. When you craft messaging like this, you fundamentally shift the value equation in their mind. And they go, well, this is important. This is something I'm evaluated on. This is a priority. I'm aligning with his priorities, and it's something that is worth meeting. Now, just because, though, I sent a really good message does not mean that Eric is going to call me back. You need to know that. This could be an email, could be a voicemail. Eric is still crazy busy, and I need to understand that from the get-go, that he's just simply not going to be calling me back because he's got to jump on a plane and go out with his salespeople in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and he's going to be gone all week. So I, as a salesperson, now have the responsibility to keep the sales momentum going. And while you may be thinking that perhaps you should wait a week or 2 or 3 weeks and you don't want to look pathetic and like you're really needy by contacting him too much, I want you to realize that Eric went through his email messages or voicemail messages so fast that he won't remember that I left him a message 3 days ago. I mean, honestly, he won't. I mean, he might. If it's a good message, it might trigger something in his head, which, by the way, is why you do this. You craft this campaign. But, Eric will delete your message, and you need to get on and get back to him in a short period. And you need to not just say what I see happening all the time. And that's what most people are doing. Dang. It's my fault I'm not adjusting sufficiently to the system. Anyway, what your job is to keep in touch. It's truly your job to keep in touch. And most salespeople are keeping in touch inappropriately, which is causing your sales cycles to go on and on and on and on. And what I see happening over and over, which is creating more problems and stretching things out for you and making things take an interminable time and have you dying at the end, is I see people calling up and say, or leaving a message, email, hi, Eric, this is Jill Konrath calling. I'm just touching base to see if your company has decided to do anything about training your salespeople right now. That is so lame. That is so lame. You may not call and touch base anymore. If you could eliminate some words from your vocabulary that will increase your success rate, you must eliminate the word touching base or checking in, because those are really nice, chirpy little salespeople comments, follow-ups, but they add no value. And your goal is to consistently show what's going on, what the reason is for making a change. And I'm going to share with you some things now that you can do that have some significant impact in terms of how you can build the case for talking with you or for making a change in what your prospect is doing. And again, they're evaluating, is it worth changing? And you are saying, they're not changing, they're not moving ahead. But you need to step back and say, what are the sticking points? Why are these people not changing? I mean, look at it strategically yourself and say, well, why aren't they? Well, you know what? It's not because they're stupid or they don't get it. It's because you aren't approaching them in a way that helps them get the business value of what to do. So you need to say, why aren't they changing? Well, here's some of the basic reasons that they're not changing. They can't justify making a change. They don't have a good, solid business case that it's worth going through the effort of bringing in a new resource. That's a huge issue. It means you have to be talking about the business value and aligning with their priorities. They may be concerned about the impact because there might be people in their organization that may lose their jobs because of this or because of other political things that are going on. They may be concerned about getting the buy-in. Believe me, nobody makes a decision alone anymore, and they've got to convince a bunch of people what to do. So buy-in is an issue, and how do you get the CFO to sign off on something like this? If you have to sell it to the CFO. Maybe you're the VP of HR and you think it's really hot potatoes that somebody's got this wonderful thing, but the CFO says, well, we've got a lot of different ways to invest our money in this organization. Is this the best way to do it? So again, you have to look at where are the sticking points. When you understand the sticking points, you start to understand what you can do as the next step to keep momentum going. Another key area for a lot of people is decision insecurity. And that's because the people that are making decisions about your product or service have not made decisions in this area before. The more complex a decision is, the worse this decision insecurity becomes because nobody wants to make a mistake in today's business environment. They don't want to goof and bring in, kick out what, the devil that they're living with to bring in a devil they don't even know anything about. They want to be sure and safe, and they want to make sure everybody is making the right decision. Believe me, this is an opportunity. All these things are opportunities for you to do something to keep the momentum going. And they're also concerned about the risks involved in making the change. So knowing that this is the issue, these are the sticking points, your role as a salesperson is fundamentally shifting now. You can't keep touching base to find out if it's moved up in their priority list. You can't keep checking in to see if they're going to be making decisions. You need to move into a different role, and that's the role of the educator, somebody whose job is to educate your prospects about why they should make a change, what's going on in the marketplace, anything that they don't know that would help them run their business better and achieve their goals. Anything that might prevent them from moving ahead in a decision with you. Now what might that mean? It could mean these kinds of things. Think about what kind of invaluable information can you bring them. And the key word here is invaluable. You don't want to send them stuff. You want to send them something that they go, this is interesting, this is good, this is helpful, helpful. Key words, helpful. The information you should be sending them should be helpful. So what's helpful to them? Something about the top problems that they're facing. That's always helpful. Something about the key obstacles they're facing to achieving their goals, or how other companies are doing things, or the results that they can get from making the change, or trends and things that are happening in the marketplace, or questions that they should be asking as they think about making this change, or paths for making decisions. There are so many things that are helpful to prospects. Comparison charts for how to compare two or three different vendors, but maybe want to highlight your strengths a little bit better. Anything you can do to help your prospect determine if it's of value to make a change or if it's not is something that you should be bringing to the table to them. This is what speeds up sales momentum, not checking in and touching base with which most of us are doing these days because we think that that's what our role is. If you do that, you're simply a pest. So what does this mean? This is the invaluable information. So what does it mean from what you can do? Possible resources. A lot of you need to start thinking about this. Some of your companies may have some excellent resources already, and they may be listed on your website, or they may be in your marketing department. Some of your companies may be stark raving naked and have literally nothing because maybe you are the company and don't have anything, or because they don't get that this is what's needed out there. In any case, you can be successful on your own if you have to by thinking out of the box and creating resources on your own. Now that's not necessarily the best use of your sales time, but if you don't have it, lacking these resources will prohibit you from getting the business. Simple resources. You should be able to give examples of customers. And I mean if you tell somebody that you're able to speed up time to market, You should be able to share a story about how you can help somebody speed up time to market. You can talk about industry trends. You can share other people's resources. That's right. You can share other people's resources, things that other companies are doing, studies. I mean, I share studies that other people have done. If you have white papers that might be relevant. There's a whole plethora of information. But please note, none of this is what I say ruins sales. There is no marketing collateral allowed until a prospect is serious about making a decision, has justified things, and is totally looking at options. If you send out your brochures and let me tell you all about our stuff, and here's the cheat sheets that you need to know, that is crap from a customer's perspective, and it's deletable, and it slows down your sales cycle, and it makes you look like an invaluable resource, which prohibits you from moving ahead. I know that you like your stuff, your PDFs, and all that kind of stuff to show people, and that you like to tell people to go to your website and learn about all your products, but they don't care. They don't care. So what can we do differently? And let me start pulling some of this together so you can see how it works. Here's a follow-up email message that you could send out. Look at this. As I mentioned in my call to you yesterday, I know how tough it is for your salespeople to set up meetings with today's crazy busy prospects. Recently, in working with another high-tech firm, we helped 87% of their sales reps land initial meetings with their top targeted accounts in just 2 months. If you'd like to find out how we did this, let's set up a time to talk. Would next Tuesday work for you? Please note, this is not anything about training programs or what I sell. This is about Eric's issues. It's Eric's problems. It's Eric's challenges with an example thrown in. Purpose being, my goal is to have Eric say to me, oh, Jill, that's interesting. How did you do that? What did you do? That's what I want to happen. I want Eric to ask me that question. But it's an enticing message without the solution, but a focus on the business challenges. Here's another example of a message that you might send. And it's a slightly different spin on the same topic. You don't need to use the words the same way. You can come up with different words to use it. And you might say, with today's volatile economy, sales cycles are getting longer and more complex. And it's a real challenge to meet your numbers when that's happening to your reps. I thought you might be interested in this study on what's working best in today's business environment. And give a link. Also, I've got some ideas on how to help your reps speed up their sales. Would you have 15 minutes next week for a quick conversation? Please note, very short, to the point. One example, not overkill. We mean to keep things simple, not overkill. One simple example. One link, not 4, because 4 sends them into overwhelm, which delays your sales process. And finally, another example. Okay. Another follow-up message. Eric, when we talked a few weeks ago, you mentioned how important it was to put more prospects in your pipeline. That's why I thought you might be interested in our upcoming webinar on Friday. We'll be covering critical mistakes that cause hot prospects to disappear and strategies your salespeople can use to prevent that from happening. I hope you can join us. This is bringing in another way of educating people that is highly helpful. It's about inviting people to events. You're here today, and you're not here because I'm talking about my sales training programs. Please note that. You're not here because ReadyTalk is talking about their web-based services. You're here because we're talking about something that's of interest. And that's what you need to be thinking about too. How can I hold an event, whether it's an in-person event, a short webinar. It doesn't have to be an hour. We're doing about 30 minutes today. 39 minutes with Q&A, and it could be a teleseminar as well. But an event attracts potential customers if it's focused on areas of need, and you're educating them. Again, the whole thing goes back to sticking points. You need to take a look at where people are getting stuck with your sales momentum. If sales are taking way too long, which many of you said they were, it's because you're either not doing the right things to get people positioned correctly to do something with you. You're talking about your stuff. It's because you're checking in or following up with people with trite language about just checking in and you're offering no value and you're not being helpful. The whole goal today in working with customers is to be that invaluable resource focused on helping them achieve their goals. That's what it's all about. And you need to be a helpful resource. Now your company may have information on here. If it doesn't, you can also gain information yourself. There's a lot of great information on the web, and it's totally okay to use other people's resources to help you educate your customers. So in conclusion, what I'll say before we move to the Q&A section is that this isn't about magic. I mean, there is no secret formula. People expect me to come in and, sprinkle magic dust on them and, suddenly things change. The reality of it is when you're dealing with crazy busy people, you need to change your own behavior. If you don't change what you're doing, you will not get the results you want to get. Your sales cycles, you'll find fewer prospects. It'll take longer to get those prospects. You'll be easier to brush off because you're not working on what's important to them and their key priorities. The reality is you need to probably stop and do some work here. And when you do the work, everything speeds up and everything happens much faster. And I need to tell you that I've had a lot of comments from people over the past years who have been using these strategies, and people have written emails to CEOs and gotten responses in 8 minutes. I've had people achieve other, writing to a VP of HR who they've been trying to reach for years and nothing, and the next morning they have an email waiting for them, let's set up a time to talk. When you change the conversation, when you change your approach, you give people a chance to talk with you about what's important to them. And so that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about today. We are going to be opening up for questions after ReadyTalk comes in and says a few words. And if you want to stay around, and I think we have a lot of questions here. I've seen them popping in. But we will stay and answer questions.
We do have a number of questions. You guys did a great job of seeing all those over. So we'll try to get through as many as we can. We apologize if we don't quite get to yours. But again, we'll try to go through them and give Jill enough time to answer them sufficiently. So I know that you had talked a little bit about voicemails and those kind of messages. But what if you happen to catch a really busy VP on the phone? How do you kind of quickly craft a message that's going to be important enough to kind of keep them on the phone, keep them interested when you actually catch them?
Okay, and this was something I learned the hard way, by the way. I spent a lot of time when I was trying to figure out what would be working and what would be effective and what could I actually, how could I create a process that I could teach other people. And the first time I was really, really grounded in it, and I had the voicemail message strategy and the email strategy down pat. I actually called the VP of marketing and sales for a technology firm in Minneapolis where I live. And my first call to this guy, he actually answered the phone, which threw me for a total loop. I mean, I was waiting for, hi, this is Peter, leave your message at the beep, and it was, hi, this is Peter. And I was stumped because it was like, oh my God, I'm not ready for this. What I realized at that point is that I had to have the same message ready to go whether a human being answered the phone or not. And if you look at any of these messages that I've shared with you earlier, each message is crafted so it could be used exactly as if I got Eric on the phone. Eric, Jill Konrath calling. In working with other VPs of sales, I know that one of the key challenges your salespeople are facing is new client acquisition. The reason I'm calling is I wanted to set up 15 minutes to talk about some of the, I'm just ad-libbing right now, but the point is when you have the message down for the voicemail, it's the exact same message that you would use, except I'd like, the closing comment may be slightly different. And you add one more thing. You put in a provocative question that engages them in a conversation, a short conversation. And a provocative question for me might be, are you satisfied with the length of the sales cycle? Or how is the lengthening sales cycle impacting your sales revenue? And so everybody needs to think of what is the question that can engage people and get a quick answer that might be an evaluative answer about, about the issue, not about are you looking to buy this, but about the issue that your product or service solves. And then say, don't try to talk then, try to get them on the phone and say, let's set up 15 minutes to talk about it. Don't ask for a long time because there are a lot of them are doing screening calls, 10 or 15-minute calls to see if you're worth meeting with at first.
Great. Thank you. So we have a bunch I know that came in previously on the registration form from some people and a lot that came in during today's webinar, but what do you kind of think is, there's probably not a magic number, but the frequency of calls so that you're not annoying but you don't fall off their radar? Do you have any advice for that?
Right. First of all, let me just say that in terms of the number of attempts that you should be making, we're finding that right now 10 to 12 to 14 attempts is what it's taking to actually connect with a human being. Now that doesn't mean, like I said, that somebody can't answer right away on your first message, but you need to plan a campaign from the start. And what I suggest is that your campaign roll out every 2 to 3 days and that you go back and forth between email and voicemail, not just stay with one medium. You really do need both. A lot of people ask, which is better, email, voicemail. It's good to have both, but people will respond more to email, but you need the voicemail in there as well to be the connection. And the other thing I'd say is if you have uncovered a trigger event, which all of you got the trigger event ebook when you registered for this session, then you would be more urgent in your communications with people because you've uncovered a specific need, a priority that's a top one and urgent right now.
Great, thank you. So how do you address, we kind of talked to this about the no decision when we took the poll at the beginning. How do you address the budget is frozen block when you know that maybe they, when you know that they're building and buying a product?
Okay, and this will be the second to the last question. We'll take one more question after that. I know we're running a little late, so, but I do want to give people advance warning. How do you handle the there's no money in the budget thing? First of all, you need to realize that in a volatile economy, budgets are being evaluated every 90 days. And so if you're selling something big or reasonable that could have an impact that's reasonable on an organization, if you get somebody who is your prospect who is a strong vocal opinion for we need to change this can make a big difference. Again, we have a strong value proposition. They get the difference it's going to make. They understand how they can implement it. They can actually create budget. And what they won't do is they won't go get necessarily more money, but they'll take money from this and move it to that. So I never let the fact that the budget is frozen right now totally impact where I'm going. The second thing I would say is if somebody, and what I told you earlier that you need to jolt people out of reality, out of their complacency. If somebody says the budget is frozen, a real jolt might be, and you have to think about what you're going to say after this. But the first thing you would say is, yes, a lot of people are dealing with that, and that is exactly why we need to talk. And then the follow-up from that would have to explain why you need to talk. But when budgets are frozen, companies are not able to do some things that they really, really want to do that can help the organization. And if your product or service can reduce costs or drive sales or increase operational efficiency or productivity, you have a reason for them to get your product now because it will free up money for other resources in their organization or other projects that need to be done. So just because somebody says it's not in the budget is not a reason to stop where they're going. You need to do a jolt and say, yes, a lot of people are saying that right now with the tight economy, and that's and that's exactly why we need to talk. But you better practice what you're going to say after that and have a really good solid reason that makes business sense from your prospect's perspective if you do that. Last question.
All right, so we'll kind of combine this one into two. You get stuck with the gatekeeper a lot. One, how do you really find who maybe the decision maker is and get past maybe that gatekeeper role? Or what do you think an influencer has to play in this whole sales cycle?
Okay, gatekeepers, our biggest gatekeeper right now is voicemail and email. Let me just say that. So I've shown you strategies on how to deal with your biggest gatekeeper. Secondarily, if you are dealing with somebody who does have an administrative assistant, you may choose to communicate directly with the administrative assistant. And if you know that you're dealing with the person who works directly with the CEO or the VP of operations, you may choose to write to their secretary or administrative assistant and send them a note and say, I know that Bob is concerned, or I know that Eric is concerned about these issues. I've got some ideas. I'd like to set up a time to talk with them. And you actually talk with her as if she's a very intelligent person who knows exactly what her boss or his boss wants to do, and you have a very business-oriented conversation. It's about the business issues. It's about the impact that you can have and the difference you can make for their organization. So you have to treat the gatekeeper as a solid person who can be a solid ally, not somebody you just brush past. They will stop you faster than you can imagine if you do that. Did I answer all parts of that question?
I think so. Hopefully, Michael, go ahead. Michael, go ahead and chat in if you need further clarification. Yeah. I know we are running up against the time that we said we'd take out of your schedule, so I'm going to put up this quick slide again. I apologize we didn't get to quite every single question, but thank you guys again for your engagement in the webinar today. Just a quick thank you from us here at ReadyTalk, who hosted the webinar today. If you guys have any questions for us at all, please feel free to just chat yes into the chat feature. We'll be sure to have somebody follow up with you. And again, as you see the screen, I'm actually going to close out just the web portion of today's event. So you can fill out the post-event survey We would love some feedback from you, not only for Jill. I know she got a lot of great comments during today's call, but also for us as well if you have any additional questions. So you'll see that post-event survey pop up here in just a second. And I'll hand it back over to Jill for any closing comments that you might have.
Yeah, I know we've just kind of touched on everything. We've moved really, really fast today. So I would invite anybody who's still listening to go visit my website, jillkonrath.com. That's Konrath with a K. Tons of free sales resources there to help you with many of the questions that we didn't get into in enough depth. So jillkonrath.com is where you need to go.
Great, and thank you again so much today, Jill, for taking some time to share with our audiences. We really do appreciate it. And thank you for everybody else who joined today's call, and we hope to see you back again on another event in the ReadyTalk webinar series. Have a great one.